You are being robbed right now. Robbed of your greatest assets. Robbed of your most private thoughts and desires. Robbed of your secrets. Robbed of your privacy. And robbed of yourself. And what is worse is that you are not just being stolen, but bought and sold. Your decisions and thoughts are now purchased by someone else who sells it back to you time and time again. In the digital age, it is the customer that becomes the product. And all you had to do was press accept. As dystopian as this sounds, this is the present state of modern business, governance, and crime. People pour their trust and vulnerability into their services and technologies, allowing them into their homes and private lives, just to have their trust be broken and their comforts turn on them. Unauthorized surveillance is betrayal. But are we the ones truly at fault? I mean, people are shocked that every day that they are being spied on every single day by their favorite companies, their own governments, and even malicious criminals. But these everyday people don't seem too willing to stop it, despite the blatant immorality. Therefore, this analysis shall ask the question of today. Why do companies spy on their customers? And why are we reluctant to stop it? Are people simply unaware of the intrusions taking place? Or are they left with no other choice? Scholars that have tackled this issue generally agree that the majority of these privacy breaches are really just the result of digital illiteracy. In other words, internet and digital product users blindly agree to data theft and surveillance simply because they are uninformed. It is not your fault, however. There is a clear and deliberate confusion enforced by the data thieves regarding the complicated terms and names thrown around in pop-up consent forms, and, sadly, even by other researchers who attempt to bring privacy breaching to light. Therefore, one must familiarize themselves with the lexicon of their own data. My goal with this entire research, especially this chapter, is to aid in demystifying the digital world so that everyone, especially our most vulnerable, can use online services confidently and safely. Some of the most commonly inserted phrases into consent pop-ups are words such as cookies, metadata, and even just the phrase data itself. So I shall begin with demystifying what exactly data even is. In terms of internet privacy, a person's data is simply just information and analytics about them that are collected for some sort of future reference. For data trackers, more complex, specific aspects of data are often just grouped together and simplified into what is just called metadata, which pretty much just means data about data. Metadata essentially generalizes a person's information so that the data collector has a summarized version of it. Essentially, if you have a big conglomerate of the person's information and all their data, metadata is just sort of taking the most crucial, biggest, important parts of that data, organizing that in a more readable format so it is easier to understand, easier to analyze, and much quicker to just identify patterns, organize it in a more readable way for the collector and any business buyers. For example, metadata can be essentially when a phone call took place, where it took place, who it was between, but not exactly the nitty-gritty details of the phone call itself when the people were talking. Metadata is essentially just meant to help a website summarize the key points about your information so that quick algorithmic decisions can be made in an economic fashion. This alludes to the fact that there are several different types of data collected from a human user. First and foremost, on an external or superficial level, we have what is classified by McAfee as the first data level, personal data, such as a person's full name, their address, their phone number, their email, their gender or age, their face, or anything on the surface of a user that is linked to their identity, employment, residence, or contact. Now, personal data is what most people think when they hear about data theft and surveillance. Their concerns lie with a website knowing where they live, what they look like, and who they are. However, I am devastated to say that your personal data is the least of your problems. In fact, it is some of the least valuable information to a website that wants your kinds of data. What a website and data trafficker takes from its users is much more sinister. Beyond personal data, there is other more internal information about a person that not even they consciously know about. Usage data is one layer deeper and describes the information regarding a user's interactions with a website, including their emails, their text messages, the specific images, advertisements, and links clicked on in the website. Usage data essentially recognizes how a user uses the website and then utilizes that data to anticipate what a user is likely to click on or who they are likely to talk to based on past clicks and past interactions with those other users or with those other links. And even deeper, they use what is called behavioral data, which tracks more complex interactions with a website, such as search history, purchase history, as well as your conduct on the site, which includes the repetitiveness of certain actions and the link clicking patterns you are most likely to follow each time you visit the website based off your past activity. This kind of data informs a website about what it should be recommending to you in terms of content and purchase habits. Scarily, it can be coupled with your personal and usage data in order to know the average time of day that a user looks at or buys certain things and where they do it. So the site can recommend them a type of food they regularly have on Thursday nights, or the kinds of videos they like to watch while at their parents' house for the weekend, for example's sake. The deepest layer of basic data collection is attitudinal data, which is calculated with the help of the previous three, can't do it without them, and determines a user's motivation for purchasing something or consuming certain content, as well as how satisfied they are after their purchase or viewing, their frequency to buy again or not to, quickness to return a product or to recommend it to a friend, as well as how long you watch this video before you become bored of it. These can all inform future content and service creation. And a method in which all of this data is collected is through the use of something called internet cookies. Now, contrary to popular belief, Cookies are really the seeds sown at the very beginning of the data collection process. In short, they are the tools used to discover and replicate a person's preferences. When a person visits a website and mindlessly clicks that Accept Cookies button, a small text file is downloaded to their browser on the computer's hard drive. The file will then log the person's behavioral, viewing, and search patterns, as well as any login information or any frequently typed terms they do. And it all comes into effect when the user revisits the website after closing it. When it is reopened, the website will take your browser's file of the personal data patterns, now referred to as a cookie, and use it to remodel the website in a way that is personalized to the user's habits, likes, and preferences, all based upon the behavioral, personal, usage, and attitudinal data retrieved from your previous visit. This means that whatever it is that certain type of person clicked like on in their Facebook feed, it will be gathered and analyzed to determine what it is about the post that the user enjoyed so much. So the site can keep recommending very similar posts back to the user. So they keep on interacting more and more with the site and perhaps keep purchasing more. But overall, the goal here is to keep the customer interacting with the site. Not necessarily buying anything, but just interacting with the site. So more of their data, more of their behavioral patterns are being sifted into the algorithm of the site so it knows more about you, and the cycle continues. It really is just one big data circle. From the perspective of a non-assuming individual, when they visit YouTube again the next day to find even more videos about Italian cooking like they were watching yesterday, or are greeted to their forum page login with their username and password already autofilled for them without the click of a button, it is quickly perceived as nothing more than a great convenience. And that is precisely what these websites want their users to believe, that they're doing all of this work to make the customer's life easier and more enjoyable. Our complacency will discourage any questioning or fear in their services that would detract customers or perhaps bring a blow to their massive reputations. These careless actions by users are what perpetuate mass digital surveillance, only slightly aided by the websites themselves. This is the crucial reason why digital privacy literacy is imperative if you want to start taking control of your data again. To have a fighting chance, you've got to be informed. As Harvard professor and expert on the digital surveillance age, Shoshana Zuboff put it, "Our ignorance is their bliss." On a grander scale, it can be said that there are multiple agents playing in this digital game each and every day, fighting over your valuable data, not just corporate. Three primary modes have been observed to be the main perpetrators of this data theft and data sale. There's government surveillance, criminal surveillance, and of course, corporate surveillance. Each one steals users' analytics and info for a spectrum of reasons, but all with the common goal of gaining power over a populace through the digital tools that they rely on so much. Governments, especially authoritarian ones, are known for their mass surveillance practices. But nowadays, using social media to track a person's political views, not only by what they post, but the political leanings of the accounts they follow and the content they consume, even indirectly, using this information to prosecute political opposition. Not just domestic political opposition either. In fact, just as I'm editing this, I'm reading an article here on how Western media has just learned about mainland Chinese hacking contractors, in which the Chinese government will pay these organizations to hack or cyber attack foreign governments so that the Chinese government can buy whatever sensitive information was retrieved from the hack. Which transitions well into the more rogue, criminal side of surveillance. Myself and many people I surveyed about digital surveillance before my research quickly cited hackers and criminal spyware as the biggest threat to their digital privacy. It is understandable when most internet users are made to be cautious about clicking sketchy-looking links that may leave their system and activity vulnerable. Particularly, the vulnerability of the laptop webcam has been brought into question in recent years, as many people, myself included, worry that there might be someone watching you from behind that camera without you knowing. As a matter of fact, it is reported that more than 60% of laptop users covered their laptop webcams and microphones in duct tape in fear of hacker spying, according to surveys by HP. Here is a picture of Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta and Facebook, with bits of tape blocking his webcam and computer mic, clearly aware of something we should be as well. And I am sad to say that they're not being irrational in the least. Countless times there have been massive stories about privacy breaches thanks to internet hackers taking advantage of those who are vulnerable in their online privacy. Most notably, children. In the late 2010s, a peculiar rabbit hole was discovered on the video sharing platform YouTube, where by searching the phrase webcam video from, thousands upon thousands of videos would appear, seemingly showing footage recorded from a person's computer webcam. However, most of them included footage of children who did not seem to know that they were being filmed, as many were sitting away from the cameras or even getting dressed. The comments and staggering view counts on these videos suggested that they were being viewed by those with more explicit intentions. And it was revealed that various hackers had found ways to access webcams via the sending of enticing but malicious links that broke down the firewall, allowing hackers to watch and record children who sat in front of their computers. Now, anyone had an access to a huge repository of recordings of children free of charge on YouTube.com, and the website was extremely slow to detect the malicious activity, since you could only find the videos by searching the code word webcam video from, which already is a default title given to just webcam recordings uploaded to YouTube without a title, something most people would not be searching for, so it could all stay hidden. It should be noted that thankfully it was revealed that this situation was not what many had claimed to be a secret pedophile ring on YouTube.com. What it really was merely just rips of webcam footage by hackers, even some by children who really didn't know any better, uploaded onto YouTube and being viewed by nefarious parties who had realized the loophole in YouTube's algorithm and started abusing it in that way. Really, this whole situation is just a lesson in digital literacy, really, and ensuring that children, above all, know what they're doing online and know not to give sensitive information away and know not to upload sensitive information about them or their bodies. Thankfully, nowadays, if you were to search this on YouTube, you don't get this. YouTube after a while, did take care of the situation, and now all you get is sort of webcam tech tips and things like that. But it's not just webcams in danger. In fact, a person's or a business's security system can be vulnerable to spying. It often doesn't even require the long-winded process of sending a link to someone and person clicking that to give hackers access to the security cameras. Oftentimes what'll happen is people just won't change the default passwords on their security systems, and hackers will take advantage of that. For example, a lot of home security systems and a lot of internet security systems that companies use or public spaces use come with some sort of default password. And those default passwords are either something simple like 0000 or 1234, admin1, or even just password. Did you know that there are websites available completely free of charge that allow you to access almost 73,000 public and home IP security systems 24 hours a day? They are Instacam.com, Shodan.io, and WorldCam.eu, to name a few. And it is not as if these are hidden deep web urban legends. These are readily available on the surface web through a simple Google search. It is remarkable how unapologetic and blatant these breaches of privacy are on the internet by criminals and governments alike. And yet, despite that, I'm here to argue that the actual greatest threat to our privacy in the modern day, and the actual most malicious perpetrator of data theft and surveillance, is the corporate sector. This is the tracking of customer and employee data and the analysis or sale of it to third-party business buyers. Have you ever considered how an app or online service that provides such vast and crucial amenities can be free of charge? YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Google, and really most mobile apps are all familiar examples. The common answer that most people believe is that such free platforms are paid for entirely by advertisement spots. For example, a person watching a YouTube video can do so for free, but YouTube and sometimes the video's creator are paid via the irritable but skippable advertisements placed before, in the middle, and at the end of videos. However, advertisements make up only half of the profit used to keep these platforms running. So how are these websites paid for otherwise? Well, through you. Carlo van de Veer put it very well when he said, it's kind of like selling someone a car for free, or selling someone a phone for free, as the customer will pay the company not in cash, but in the dividends of their valuable personal analytics that are gathered with them using the product, how they use it. It's all that usage data, personal data, behavioral data, all the stuff we talked about before. When a person simply starts using a digital service, especially after they have clicked that little accept or I agree to the terms and conditions buttons, they unknowingly give up a large sum of their behavioral, usage, attitudinal, and personal details, as discussed before. If you remember the concept of cookies, this is where it truly comes into play. Company websites and purely digital services like social media and search engines are the primary users of cookies, and they make tracking your activity and behavioral patterns extremely simple. Companies will argue that their reason for collecting these forms of behavioral and usage data is to improve customer experience when visiting their website or when purchasing things. For example, when a website wants to know where you live and, the kinds of foods you like, it can recommend you restaurants in your area that serve that kind of food. And as stated before, it can track how often you eat these foods and when you are statistically most likely to be craving them based on past patterns to create an almost too perfect personalized experience. But beyond service improvements using in-depth details about someone, there are much more malicious and profitable uses for taking this data from people. In the 1990s and early 2000s, a lot of companies operating websites began only really being interested in collecting personal data. That's once again addresses, phone numbers, names, locations, etc. This was seen as the useful type of data that could help marketing and service improvement. However, they also noticed a vast amount of other data being brought to them, including, how often a user clicked on videos of a certain color palette, or the repeated combinations of typos made, or at what time they visited the site. All these very specific, seemingly irrelevant and wasteful data to the site. And that's exactly how they saw it. They saw it as just irrelevant, wasteful, useless, and too specific and complex data to actually, be useful when it comes to real service improvement or promotion. It's what Professor Zuboff from before calls the behavioral surplus, meaning an explosion of knowledge and data that companies had zero idea what to do with at first. It was only by the late 2000s that the marketing teams of these companies realized how invaluable this behavioral data could be to them as a way to fiercely compete in the new digital age. In summary, they began implementing the use of the cookie tool, as explained before, to organize the analytics being sourced from user behavior, all this behavioral surplus. Corporations online could now better understand their customers in an unprecedented way, mentally that is. They would now advertise to them more accurately and personalize their services. However, there was even more happening behind the scenes, as marketing teams had found a money-making discovery. The data from customers on their attitudes, behaviors, and identities were valuable and revealed fascinating information on the various types of customers and what they're likely to do or desire, dubbed models of human behavior. These kinds of demographics became sought after by other companies, by other marketers wanting a slice of this behavioral pie to see what kind of customers there are. How do customers actually think and behave? So, these demographics became sought after, and companies began collecting large profit from selling off these behavior models, filled with user patterns to third-party buyers in the form of what was called third-party cookies. It's just a mix of the third-party buyers and the cookie tool explained before, just merged together into that common term of third-party cookies, cookies you are selling elsewhere to some other buyer. This leads to what Professor Zuboff rather famously declared it as the age of surveillance capitalism, which really is an accurate term. It's surveillance used to capitalize off of the product, which is the customer. Like I said before, the customer becomes the product. These third-party buyers, they now know what you like, when you like it, where you like it, how you like it, so they can sell your information back to you in the form of personalized products. It's a big circle. Surveillance capitalism really is just a big circle. Data brokering, as it's called, is an approximately $200 billion industry, according to WebFX. The Resume and Business Connections website LinkedIn, for example, made upwards of $3 billion selling off the data of more than 700 million users to advertisers and marketers in 2020 alone. Demographics also affect the cost of a person's data. For, on average, and as an example, a man aged over 55 who is Hispanic, his data is worth around 21 cents per cookie in the year 2021. Does that not sound dehumanizing to you? People are being organized, labeled, essentially packaged and sold to these companies, to third-party buyers, and then back to us. It's a big circle. As I said, the customer becomes the product. Do not be misled, however, as it is not only the customers of a corporation that are being subject to this mass surveillance, but it's also the employees of the corporation themselves while they're working there. Through the use of surveillance software, modern employers for most companies with more than 500 employees can track the in-work and outside work behavior of their employees to keep up to date with how well they serve the company productively and morally. And this seems like something out of a post-apocalyptic dictatorship, tracking your employees to see if you are doing what you're supposed to do, and also tracking your out-of-work habits to see if you're a good fit person. It does seem like something out of a post-apocalyptic movie. However, this is real and really has been going on for a lot longer than you think. In fact, early versions of employee surveillance have been practiced as late as more than 100 years ago with Ford Motors. In 1914, Ford was serious about their reputation as a clean, dedicated, and sterile company that stuck out from its competition by having the most productive and model citizens as their employees. So after an employee was hired, they had to make sure that, they were acting like that prized employee on the job site and at home as well. Through their very own, what they call a sociological department, they assigned private investigators that would phone, spy on, and arrive at the employees' homes to discreetly conduct behavior analysis on them through interviews and things like that. And if they did not pass this test, they could arrive at work the next morning with a sudden termination notice. Nowadays, digital employee surveillance has grown in popularity since COVID-19, where, many employees were forced to transition to working from home. And in an effort to protect the integrity of the workplace management, companies in the digital age now started to implement softwares such as Ekran System or Voriato into company and personal technology that could assist in not only tracking an employee's work habits, but their activity outside of work too, including their fitness, when they start and stop working, search history, and the opening of non-related tabs while one was meant to be working. This stuff is called tattleware by its critics, and digital workplace surveillance via software has only doubled since COVID has ended. And the amount of employers who admit to tracking and spying on employee behavior is up by 80% according to ExpressVPN. Hilariously, while conducting research on this employee surveillance, the top 4 search results on Google were advertisements for software that help you track your employees. There is zero shame, and yet when it comes to actual transparency from employers, they find themselves in a legal gray area where they're not completely obligated to inform employees about their surveillance because they see their employment, their acceptance of the job, and acceptance to use company technology as kind of consent enough, and that seems to be covered legally. So, what can be done? The internet and technology like it are such vital parts of our everyday life. So do we have no choice but to let ourselves be tracked and sold? No. No one should have to be held hostage by or submit to the gods of surveillance capitalism. There are both individual and legal solutions to this modern dilemma that we find ourselves in, that you can start doing yourselves or advocating for today to manage corporate, government, and criminal tracking. Number 1, always choose to customize your cookies. Make a habit to just stop blindly pressing accept each time the cookie pop-up appears, because oftentimes there's going to be an option all the way at the bottom that allows you to manage the types of data the site can store as cookies. So click it and be sure to disable all options you do not feel comfortable with. Other than that, users can choose to use alternate search engines like DuckDuckGo or Brave Search as opposed to Google or Yahoo, who, as we've discussed, work essentially as third-party advertising sites first and foremost, that consistently track each term and the stuff you do. As Brave Search puts it, with Google, the real product is you. Alternate search engines sometimes use Google as a base to source the search results, but will use a proxy to guard your IP and guard your search terms so they can't be linked back to any one user. On a larger international scale, it's clear that governments of the world need to start enacting legislation and policy that would force the accountability, transparency, restriction, and regulation of digital privacy and surveillance with customers and corporations. The European Union, for example, has had excellent success with their new law, the GDPR, or General Data Protection Regulation, a law that, in its own words, lays down rules relating to the protection of natural persons with regard to the processing of personal data and rules relating to the free movement of personal data. It was adopted in 2016, put into effect in 2018, and since then has seen monumental success, including this example in January 2019, where Google was fined by France, who used the GDPR to prove that Google was being negligent and reckless with their handling of people's private data. This is proof that these companies aren't invincible and that we have an equal fighting chance against their unethical practices. Only if we stop being complacent and start taking action. Ultimately, protecting our digital privacy is up to us and our own decisions, which is why I want to flip the conversation over to you for a discussion. Question number 1. How much surveillance is too much? Can certain benefits be achieved if it is done ethically and within reason? And question number 2. Is true privacy dead? Can we ever truly live free of surveillance without having to go completely off the grid? Thank you so much for your time and watching this monster of a video that I did not mean to be so long, but hey, it happens. Thank you for just sitting here with open ears. Have a wonderful night.